Hello, and welcome to Armored Warfare. For those of you who don't know, I do some live streams of this here and there. Those get uploaded as well, but this is not live, obviously. This is going to be recorded. The recorded ones are going to be more about specific things, specific vehicles, specific topics, or what have you. Mostly specific vehicles, compared to the live streams where I basically just play everything I own for about like 2.5 hours or so. This will be more focused. This video in particular probably isn't going to have any actual gameplay. We're going to be in the garage for a while because there's some stuff I want to talk about. I played World of Tanks for an astronomical amount of time, considering it's a free-to-play game that I didn't actually like all that much, I would like to point out. I had great fun with it. But you know, after so long, it kind of just dragged out. But I kept playing it because it was really the only thing, and I had an interest in tanks. Pretty much how my decision-making process works. This game is a direct competitor to World of Tanks. It does some things better, in my opinion. It does some things that could use some work. And, you know, other things that I think World of Tanks has fixed, but this has the problem. Like, you can shoot commanders' hatches and do full damage sometimes, which isn't a thing you should be able to do. You shouldn't be able to shoot that little nub right there, which has no armor, because it's a viewport. Viewports tend to not have very much armor. Piece of glass or plexiglass or whatever it is that they make that out of. Crystal, I don't know. You shoot that and you do full damage to the tank. Sure, you can shoot that and knock out the commander, because that's probably where he's sitting. You'll have some shrapnel go into him or whatever. But you're not going to disable the tank. You're just going to hamper them pretty heavily. Has that kind of problem. But anyway, this is a direct competitor to World of Tanks. The biggest difference is the era. These are just... they're basically arbitrary trees. For some reason, they've split it like this, but whatever. They might not be arbitrary, I don't know. It might be actually who designed these vehicles. I don't have the slightest idea. But anyway... the era of this game starts where World of Tanks ended. So you have stuff like, there's the Patton 48 M113, which World of Tanks doesn't have vehicles of that class, but Leopard 1, M60 down there, T54, T62, M41. These are all tanks that would be in World of Tanks or already in our World of Tanks. So that's where it starts. It goes all the way down to stuff like the M1A2, the Leopard 2A7, I think it's 2A7, I'll check again. The Challenger 2, lovely vehicle that is. It's got like a really weird, really odd design for a modern tank, but whatever, it's there. And other things that I've never seen ever, like this thing. I don't know what this is. It looks like something that was made out of clay, like they were just in the designing process of it, and this was the clay model that they had built, but it's there. I don't have the slightest idea what it is, because it's all the way over here, which is where the artillery is placed on the tech tree, but it's not below the artillery, it's just kind of over here, so I don't have the faintest idea what that actually is. But then there's stuff like, you know, this thing. This is a straight up tank destroyer. Anyway, the classes of vehicles in this game are also quite a lot more varied. We have, obviously, your main battle tanks. These are your bread and butter, you know, front lines kind of vehicles. Not all of them are necessarily frontline vehicles, but they tend to have relatively high armor. The later tier main battle tanks all have extremely high armor, like this 2A5 apparently has 730 millimeter turret armor, which is ridiculous. But they have large guns as well. They're generally, you know, they're kind of middle of the road speed, maneuverability, that kind of thing, or, you know, fairly low maneuverability, medium of the road speed, decent armor, pretty good gun. They shoot a little bit slow, but, you know, they're your bread and butter. You've got stuff like your BMP, obviously. BMP has its own line. BMP is, if I'm not mistaken, a troop transport. Or at least it was originally designed for a troop transport. But it has a relatively powerful gun, and I believe has the ability to have barrel-fired anti-tank guided missiles? Yeah, ATGM. And I believe all of the BMP line are barrel-fired anti-tank guided missiles, which are slightly different than regular anti-tank guided missiles like the Swingfire has. You also have recon vehicles, like the Swingfire. These are basically, for those of you who play World of Tanks, these are basically your light tanks. They have, you know, basically no real firepower unless they can get around behind stuff and not get murdered in the process. But they have extremely high camo ratings. Let's find the camo rating on this thing. 0.39 camo rating. Let's look at the M60. 0.05. So they have extremely high camo ratings. And the biggest thing with these vehicles is that they can designate targets, which means bonus damage to targets. There's special abilities for vehicles, which we'll talk about. Light vehicles can designate targets for artillery fire and friendly tanks to fire at, stuff like that. But as long as they're moving at a low speed, it does not reduce their camo, so you can move in your light recon vehicles and still maintain all of your stealth as long as you move slowly. So this is kind of important. And they also have extremely high view range. They get more view range if they're stationary, so trade-offs there. You have your wheeled destroyers, which are just tank destroyers with wheels. I'm sure you could figure that out, but you see, they have wheels. Wheeled vehicles obviously behave different than tracked vehicles. Takes a little bit of getting used to because the wheel does physically have to turn in order for you to start turning, so there's some delay between going right and left and from turning to straightening and stuff like that, so it takes a little bit of getting used to. They're a little bit better with uneven terrain, rocky terrain. They're better at crossing. They also have relatively high camo, and they have a special ability. They get bonus damage while at optimal accuracy, so when your aiming reticule is as small as it can get, you'll deal bonus damage while using a destroyer. So it's recommended you basically have full accuracy every time you fire. It's actually don't remember how much it is. I saw somewhere. It's something like, I don't know, 15% or 20% extra damage or something for being at full accuracy, which you should be anyway. Just don't go shooting constantly. The other tree, you've got your, East European main battle tanks, West European main battle tanks. You know how those work at this point. You have your fire support vehicles, which are similar to your recon vehicles. They are slightly different, I believe. I'm not exactly entirely sure what is up with this line, but it exists. They have the same special ability where they can designate targets, and moving at low speed does not reduce their camo. They have the same ability to fire anti-tank guided missiles from some stuff. Apparently, they straight up get fin stabilized armor piercing though, which is interesting. It's a small caliber gun, so it's freaking 25mm chain gun apparently. So the damage and penetration isn't great, but it has AP that's decent. You have your high caliber light armor, which is effectively tank destroyers. Is basically what these are. You can look at their stats. There you go. Lots of penetration and whatnot. I don't know if they get the bonus for being at maximum accuracy. I don't believe they do. No penalty to aiming while driving forwards or backwards at low speed. That's apparently their deal. Has good handling, good mobility, and better handling on off-road terrain. That's a light tank that I'm looking at. Are all of these categorized as light tanks? Yeah, they're apparently all categorized as light tanks. Well, there's your light tanks in this game. Light tanks, like the M41 and apparently this entire line, have very good mobility and very good off-road mobility. So soft terrain mobility is much higher on these than a main battle tank, for instance. And as it mentioned there, they don't get a penalty to their accuracy whilst moving slowly. So you can have some mobility and still be able to fire with these things. They can also increase their engine output for a brief period. So they have crazy acceleration and crazy top speed for a brief period every once in a while. Very nice for getting around. And then you have your artillery pieces, which behave very differently in this game than World of Tanks, for those of you who played that. We'll start with this line. So this is the Precision SPG line, Precision Self-Propelled Gun line. This line does less damage, has Better accuracy and better aim time and slightly better reload, I think. Or no, it's slightly worse reload for reasons we'll see in a second here. Pay attention to reloads and stuff. So these do less damage, but I believe they have a better accuracy, better aim time and stuff like that. The hull is made of aluminum, so it's basically tissue paper. Don't bother hiding, actually, don't bother trying to bounce anything with angles or anything, you never will, it's aluminum. Further down this line, they get the ability to fire. I go to their gun here. They get the ability to fire multiple rounds per reload. So they have a salvo size, and these particular artillery pieces, this one and the next one, have a salvo size of 3. So it takes 7 seconds to aim, and then you can shoot, and then 7 seconds and you can shoot, assuming you want max accuracy to fire, and assuming worst case scenario, which is probably always going to be true because of how artillery behave in this game, which we'll mention in a bit. You also get smoke rounds and illumination rounds as artillery, so you can do support stuff. Illumination just lights up all enemies, all vehicles, I believe, not just enemies, in a target area. It's like 10 seconds or something. Smoke hides everyone for 20. I don't know if illumination I assume illumination doesn't remove the smoke thing, so smoke can cancel that out and whatnot. The other line, the tactical artillery, has a bigger splash radius and does more raw damage, but it takes a lot longer to aim and a lot longer to, not a lot longer to reload, sorry, a lot longer to aim, as far as I'm aware, I think, anyway. Could be mistaken. Either way, it does a lot more damage, has a pretty big splash radius. I didn't mean to close that out. And the later ones, I believe, don't get the ability to fire in salvos. I believe, yeah, it's just one shot per reload, so it's a thing. This line also gets rocket-assisted shells, which means they have a much faster travel speed. And I say much faster, but it's not crazy. It's 330 instead of 300, but it's there either way. And I think these have something else about them. I don't remember what, compared to the other artillery. There's something special about those other than that, but they don't have any special ability, they're just artillery. There you go. Has access to support ammo, receives counter battery notifications on the minimap when enemy artillery fires. So that is the deal with artillery in this game. Compared to World of Tanks, they shoot faster, they deal substantially less damage, usually. Sometimes you can get screwed over and an artillery will pierce a weak point on your tank and do a lot of damage to you and kill some crew and whatnot, but that's really rare. Especially for reasons I'm about to mention in a second here. But whilst playing an artillery, every time an enemy artillery or any artillery fires, you get a ping on the map, which is basically a circle of varying size depending on how many times they shoot before moving. So as they shoot without moving, that circle gets smaller and smaller until basically it points right at where they are when they fire. So generally you'll want to shoot and then scoot a little bit away from where you just were and shoot again. But also, every time an artillery fires, they become visible. The vehicle model itself becomes visible, so you can see enemy artillery physically when they fire, as well as the ping on the minimap if you didn't have to be looking directly at them when they shot. The nameplate does not show up, just the vehicle's model, which means you can see where they are. But if they're hiding in trees or bushes or anything like that, it does make it very difficult to pinpoint exactly where the vehicle is. So it is still recommended to tuck yourself in a corner with some trees and stuff, just so it's a little harder for the enemy to counter battery you without making guesses, and guesses are obviously worse than just shooting someone in the face, generally. The other thing about artillery that I mentioned previously, that makes it difficult to get penetration shots on people if they're paying attention, is every time an artillery shoots in your general area or directly at you, as it may happen to be usually, you'll get an indicator that says incoming artillery, and your commander will shout incoming artillery. So every time they fire, you know you're being shot at, and you can try to reposition and move and get yourself behind some cover or whatever, if you're close enough, before that shell lands, to mitigate a lot of the damage. You'll still probably take some, You might get yourself screwed depending on how you drive and where you go. You might just drive into the shell if it wasn't going at you, but you'll mitigate a lot of the damage if you're paying attention, which is the biggest thing that people seem to have a complaint about in World of Tanks style artillery, is that there's no notification until you're hit that you're being shot at. So you just kind of have to assume you're always going to get shot at. This you'll know when you're being shot at by artillery, because as long as there's a projectile in the air to your general vicinity, it will tell you there's a projectile in the air. This is also true for anti-tank guided missiles. Let's look at this thing because it's a comical monstrosity of missiles. Anytime an anti-tank guided missile is fired at you or in your vicinity, it will tell you there's an anti-tank guided missile at you or in your vicinity. Usually it then hits you in the face and hurts a lot because it's a missile. They tend to, you can't fire those from across the map, basically. So your reaction time isn't very helpful there. That's pretty much all I want to talk about in terms of that. The progression in this game, a lot of people will tell you the progression is a lot faster here than World of Tanks. I'm not so sure about that. I think I had a lot more reservation about how quickly you progressed prior, but I think the biggest thing is how spread out this game makes you progress, or inadvertently you progress in this game in a much more spread out fashion than World of Tanks. In World of Tanks, you have a similar thing here where you have, trees that branch off. The trees here never cross, which is a big difference between this and Tanks. You can't go down Leopard variant main battle tanks and eventually maybe cross from, a 2AV to, say, an XM1 or an M1 Abrams or something like that. Relatively similar-ish tanks. But you can never cross between them. As you can see how they look, they are relatively similar tanks. Just, that's how that works. To be honest, all main battle tanks at some point start looking fairly similar down the line there, but whatever, it's a main battle tank. You can't cross. So in World of Tanks, you focus on one tree to, about tier 5 or 6, and then you start spreading out. This game, you get 2 tier 1s when you start the game. You get a PT-76 and an M113. Those tanks, once you fill up the experience bar, you're then allowed to purchase either or both of the tier 2 tanks for that particular tree. Not this, because that's premium. Don't worry about those, unless you have gold that you want to spend on that. Apologies, I just burped there. But you get the experience, you fill up the experience on this tank, you can buy these 2. If you fill up the experience on these 2, it does not allow you to purchase anything, because you might notice those don't go anywhere. This is a separate box. So you cannot directly go from tier 2 to a tier 3 tank. There's a gap there. The way you get to tier 3 is by completing these objectives, basically. So each one of these has a specific thing it wants. Like BMP wants you to do 10,000 damage to top tier enemy vehicles with Sophie Wolfie's vehicles, and or some damage in mission, which is PvP, which we'll show off eventually here. Or say wheeled destroyers want you to do a certain amount of damage at vehicles more than 300 meters away. And the thing with this is that any vehicle in this tree will meet that requirement. Any vehicle all the way down to tier 10 is a Sophie's whatever, this tech tree's vehicle. So it will unlock these. You'll have it before you get to tier 10 because freaking it's not that much, jeez. But still. So when you're playing, say, a Leopard, you're inadvertently unlocking an M60, BMP-1, XM800T, Dragoon 390, and a Gvostika just by playing a Leopard 1. Anything you do in this vehicle will put progress towards unlocking these trees. Once you unlock those, you can purchase the tier 3 vehicle, or tier 4 in the artillery case, for that tree. And then you have to go through it traditionally. So in order to progress on the BMP, you have to play a BMP-1 to get a BMP-1P, to get a BMP-2, etc., etc. There's free experience that you can use to cross between them, but whatever. So it makes it... I think the amount of experience required to go from tier to tier is maybe on par or maybe a little bit less. I'm not entirely sure because I suck too much at the game to make direct comparisons between my progression speed between the two. I did much better on average in World of Tanks. I'm not sure, but the game gives you so many things to progress at the same time that if you don't focus on one thing, you're going to be stuck in a tier for ages. Like I just recently got to tier 4, not counting artillery. I just recently got to tier 4 after quite a few battles. Let's actually look at my dossier so you can see how crappy I am. So I've done, how many battles? I don't know, that many battles in one draw, apparently. Hooray, 94, there's the total. I knew it was on this page somewhere. So I've done 94 battles and I just got some tier 4s, plus whatever, you know, the PvP bonus 53 PvE missions that I've done. Now, if I had better damage output or, you know, a better win rate, that would probably push me along a little bit faster, but I don't, so that affects my you know, feeling of how quickly we're progressing down the trees. I don't know if it's faster. I feel like it's a little bit slower, but you are way more spread out. And the reason I can be so spread out, you might notice I own a lot of vehicles. You don't buy garage slots in this game. World of Tanks, you start with, I think, 5. I don't know how many you start with now because I kept getting free ones from new tech trees coming out, but you start with like 5, and every additional one you have to pay, as far as I'm aware, real world money to unlock it. You have to buy gold to unlock a garage slot. This game doesn't has that. You have unlimited garage slots. Every time you buy a vehicle, it comes with a slot. It plops itself down and you call it a day. Or play that vehicle and die horribly to something, like a guided missile. And you actually get a bonus for owning a lot of vehicles. For every vehicle you own, you get a bonus to the amount of reputation or experience. This game calls it reputation. It is experience. It's the same thing for all intents and purposes. For every vehicle you own, you get a bonus to the experience you earn in an individual match. I think it's something like for every tier 8 you get, don't quote me on these numbers, but I think it's something for like every tier 8 you get 0.5% bonus, and for every like tier 1 you get, is it tier 3? Let's go tier 3, it was every like 0.1% for every vehicle you own or something like that. So owning a lot of vehicles, even if you don't play them, allows you to progress a lot faster. So that probably affects the late game progression, which is my biggest problem with a lot of games. Having said that, 8 million credits to buy a tier 8 still seems like a lot. So I don't know, we'll have to see if we ever get there. But you know, it's the thing. For stuff down here, you've got your crew. You can train up your commander. Commanders are shared between vehicles. You can swap commanders however you feel like, so you have a certain commander with certain vehicles and whatnot, so they give bonuses that would apply better to that vehicle. Kind of have mine thrown around. You also have your crew. Your crew, as far as I'm aware, can have a maximum of 2 skills. So they get that one at level 2 and that one at level 3, I think. And then I don't know if they just continue progressing and get better skills here. I don't know what the limit is to their level. You can have a maximum of 2 skills per person. So in this case, we have a driver and a loader, or a driver and a gunner, I think. So the driver skills are spin to win, off-road, battering ram, and smooth ride, which lets you aim better while moving and stuff like that. You can see the skills over here, you teach them. I have a vehicle here that has a bunch of skills, I think. I don't remember what it is, which probably won't help. It's not you. Scorpion? No. Amex? Good lord, no. M41? No. Either way, there you go. They get skills, stuff happens, and things occur. You can also get different types of ammo, which plays into this game's armor system. You might have noticed earlier, if you were paying quite a lot of attention and not really listening to me, because I skipped over it, except for when I said aluminum, there are hull modifiers here. So steel has hull modifiers of 1.0 across the board, but there's other armor types, like military aluminum, that has 0.9 across the board, or if I want to show you something ridiculous, we can look at cage armor on an M1A1, which I believe has cage armor, if I'm not mistaken. There it is, Tuskegee RAN cage, which has really, really high modifiers for stuff. So you can see the ERA composition only is side armor. It has 0 armor on the front or the rear. It's only 30 millimeters on the side. And ERA is meant for shaped charge. You can see there it has a 6 modifier for AP, 1 for HE. It does nothing to HE, it just explodes and ruins everything. And 30 for shaped charge. Basically what that means is if you're shooting shaped charge ammunition, like heat, which is shaped charge, if you're shooting heat at something that has this kind of ERA, armor plating, basically additional armor plating that's on the side of the tank in this case, it's going to modify the thickness of that ERA by 30. So this has a thickness of 30 millimeters and a modifier of 30. So it's got 900, if I'm not mistaken, millimeters of effective thickness for heat shells. Heat shells aren't going to penetrate that. You're going to have a heck of a time breaking through that with heat. So you'll have to use something like HE or AP in order to pierce the side of that vehicle. Or you could just shoot it in the front or the back. I recommend the back because the front is generally well armored to begin with. But there's modifiers to stuff, you know. High hardness steel has 1.5 across the board. So you have to have some degree of knowledge about the potential defensive capabilities of the vehicle you're shooting at the later tiers mostly, and pick the type of ammunition you want. You've got AP, SC, which is shape charge, and HE, which is high explosive. There's multiple types of all of those. There's high explosive plastic. Dragoon has high explosive. There's high explosive incendiary on this dude here. High explosive incendiary autocannon to be specific. Look at this guy. He's got a high explosive squash head, which is good for destroying modules and hurting crew and stuff like that. Pretty much what this thing's for. So you have to know what type of ammo you want to use in what situation. And at the later tiers, there's going to be presumably a lot of ammo swapping between targets, so you have the maximum damage output. So there's a bit of a learning curve here compared to something like, say, World of Tanks, where you just shot armor piercing all the time, unless it was like a light tank and then you shot HE. You were just worried about, in World of Tanks, you were worried about thickness and angle. That's all you cared about. This, you're worried about the thickness, the angle, which in a lot of tanks, because of the era, the angle is going to be fairly steep. Look at the Leopard. One of the least steep angles on armor, actually, I think, is the Leopard and the M60. But you're worried about that, as well as the type of the armor composition, so you want to know the modifiers that can possibly be on that vehicle that you're shooting at. That's a lot of information. Early tiers start you off simple with just what's the thickness of their armor, what's the angle of their armor, what's my penetration. That's the early tiers, basically. You can see pretty much everything has just regular steel armor, because that's what tanks were made with back then. How that works. You can also do retrofits, which for World of Tanks fans, those are basically I don't remember what they're called in World of Tanks. They're the things that you put on there that cost money that improve the tanks. So that one gives me more hit points. This one gives me better normalization for my shells. Normalization is basically the effective angle of impact, I believe, is what normalization modifies. It's slightly more complicated than that, but let's not worry too hard about it. But yeah, you get retrofits, which are basically the attachments or whatever that you put on your tank to improve, the track durability, or your effectiveness against HE or whatever. You've also got your traditional consumables. You have your fire extinguisher, first aid, repair kit. You also have stuff like spare parts, which have a passive and an active that is much better than the cheaper version. So this repairs one damaged component. If you purchase spare parts, it has a passive, which increases your base repair speed, and it will repair all damaged components when it's used. It is more expensive, however, and note, there's an important thing here, cannot be purchased with gold. Neither can ammo. There is no ammo that will be purchasable with gold. There's no consumable that will be purchasable with gold. Gold is used for conversion and premium time and premium vehicles. That's all it's there for. And then you got your synthetic oil and stuff like that, which are just your one-time uses you're probably used to. Protein bars. World of Tanks had all that stuff too. But there's also a field maintenance kit that will go in your PvE slot. You can only have 3 PvP consumables or all thing consumables, because they can be used in missions as well. And a 4th PvE consumable, which in this case is usually a field repair kit. I don't know if there's like a high tier field repair kit or something like that. I don't have any idea. But those are only usable in PvE, so you can get a little bit of your health back if you're having some trouble with a mission, because those missions can be fairly hard, especially if people aren't very cooperative on some of the more difficult ones, but you know, whatever. So that's that. We're going to talk about, let's do the base next, because it'll be fairly short. Every day that you have an account, you get 100 raw materials. You cannot speed this up in any way, shape, or form as far as I'm aware as of right now. You get 100 a day. You don't have to log in every day, you just have to have an account every day. When you log in, you can then collect all of your raw materials. Like today, I logged in a little bit ago, collected 200 raw materials, and you can use that to build stuff. For instance, you can increase your crew XP earnings, free XP, currency. You can reduce the cost of premium time, which is an interesting thing. If we click this button, you can see it is reduced. You can make premium time cheaper the longer you play, which is nice. It's a nice touch. Commander XP, equipment cost, and repair cost. That is what you can change as of right now. There's more building slots, and it says coming soon. I don't have the faintest idea what they're going to be. So that's the base. That's pretty much it is. You get 100 materials every day. You can build stuff. Dossier is your information, days played, vehicles unlocked, etc., etc. You can see specific stats about all of your vehicles. It's really quite in depth. You can see how much I suck with the PT-76 apparently, and that. I was pretty good with the M113 though. I just got that. Oh, good lord. Anyway, you can see your individual stats for all your vehicles and how much I suck with everything I own, apparently. You can also see recent awards that you've got with that vehicle, I believe. I don't know if this works. Presumably at some point it will. It might just be it only works like one game session or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. And your overall achievements. So there they are. Aftermarket purchase now. So you've got your PvE achievements like this one, complete X number of PvE missions. You get rewards for doing them. So this last one, you get 5 million credits for doing that. Just for basically doing things you'll do anyway. You'll get some money out of it effectively. So that's quite nice. Let's see, where's the PvP ones? Because I believe there's one in here, a couple in here that give a crazy amount to you. There's another 5 million, there's another 5 million. 500,000, that's basically nothing. Some of these don't give more or as much as others because there's not as many tiers, obviously. They're also generally easier to do, like TD Destroyer. Destroy 4 different models of enemy tank destroyers. Well, alright. We'll do that anyway. And Battalion is your clan, basically, as far as I'm aware. This is how you create clans or guilds or whatever. And as far as I'm aware, there's going to be some sort of guild v guild or battalion v battalion system that I think is called land grab or something like that, that might behave somewhat similar to how Clan Wars is done in World of Tanks, where there's a map and you fight over land or something. I don't know anything more than that. I haven't looked into it. I don't know when it exists or if it already exists. I don't know. But you can do it for gold. Not a lot of gold if you have it. Or 4 million credit dollary dues, which is quite a bit of credit dollary dues, but you know, it's a thing, I suppose. Friends list, there be chat. Hello, Go Bricks, how are you? And this little dongly, which just shows you all your notices, which you can sort like so. You can turn specific things off if you just want to see like you know, when you get materials or when you rearm your tanks or, you know, vehicle upgrade purchases and stuff like that. You can do that if you want, or victory screens or whatever. And that's basically it. This is active boost. I don't have any idea how the heck that works because there's nothing you can do with active boost at this point, I don't think. And I believe that is everything I want to say before we get into a match, which will be next video. Hooray! I'll see you guys then. Hopefully this was in some way, shape, or form informative, so yeah. Hey!